In the last two videos, we talked about Ken Griffin, and we looked at some of the trading misconduct that Citadel has been involved in. But specifically, we looked at trading misconduct that led either the SEC or FINRA to impose penalties on Citadel for this same trading misconduct. Now, don't get me wrong, the penalties imposed were pretty laughable, and it's pretty obvious to me that these penalties did not serve as an effective means for deterring companies like Citadel from participating in serious trading misconduct. While this is all extremely concerning for any retail investor participating in the market, what's more concerning is where we left off in yesterday's video. So just to refresh your memory a little bit, we left off talking about Ken Griffin's sworn testimony to Congress, where he was asked about Citadel's funds under management and lied under oath by understating the figure by a whopping $200 billion. This is a crime and is known as perjury. Even worse, it's a federal crime which requires a minimum 1-year mandatory sentence according to section 162 of 18 USC. And yet Griffin hasn't done a single day of time in the federal penitentiary. So why is that? Well, maybe it's because the prosecuting attorney decided not to file charges. There's only 3 ways that I know on how to stay out of the federal penitentiary once you've committed a federal crime. The first one being that you don't get caught, of course. The second way is that the prosecution decides not to file formal charges, or in other words, indict you due to lack of evidence. And the third, well, you'd have to rat on somebody or, pretty much be a snitch. So if we go through the process of elimination here, we would have to rule the first one out right off the bat, because there is a record of Ken Griffin's testimony given under oath, which does not coincide with what Citadel Securities provided in their ADV filing. And we're not talking about a small mistake here. We're talking about a $200 billion difference. That being said, this rules out not only number 1, but number 2 as well, because if it's on record, then he did get caught, and the record is the evidence. So while I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that Ken Griffin would snitch out one of his buddies should push come to shove, I think we can eliminate number 3 here as well, because the prosecution simply turned a blind eye to the felony that has been committed here. Otherwise, I would expect to have seen some headlines all over the news talking about Ken Griffin being served with a federal indictment, by now at least. So seeing as how this hasn't happened yet, it would appear that Ken Griffin is above the law. And that being said, I think that every retail investor deserves to know exactly why. Now, while I can't come out and flat out tell you why, I think that I can certainly provide you with all of the dots and even put them in order for you. So from there, of course, you can take your crayons and draw a big fat line to connect them all. And I'm going to get right to it, but before I do want to ask you, or task you with, smashing that like button so that the YouTube algo gets this video out to as many apes as possible. And that'll be your contribution to the movement. And of course, if you're new here, I'd absolutely love to have you join our growing community of apes that are all fighting for the same cause. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button as well, and don't forget to tap that bell so that you're notified immediately each time I drop a new video just like this one. But without any further ado, let's get this party started. So the first thing I want to point out is that our boy Kenny happens to be a generous donor. In fact, he's one of the largest donors to the Republican Party, one of the largest donors that they've seen in a very long time. And he certainly is no stranger to Washington. We saw this paying off for him, at least somewhat, at the House hearing. Word's also going around that bringing Griffin in was just a political ploy. A quick example of this is Rep. Trey Hollingsworth of Indiana, when he called Citadel's inclusion in the hearing a sideshow to some of the real questions we should be asking about what happened and what's going on with the retail investor. So by all appearances, Citadel's influence in Washington is kind of hard to overstate. What's especially concerning for me to see, but doesn't seem to be getting much attention at all, is the fact that Citadel's executives are among those in the finance industry that regulators frequently consult with in making decisions. And just as concerning is the fact that Griffin also employs several former SEC employees. And I'm not talking about former SEC janitors working for Griffin. I'm talking about former employees such as Stephen Leporello, who ran the agency's trading and markets division and is now Citadel Securities' legal chief. I'm talking about the fact that former Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke is currently also employed as Citadel's senior advisor. I'm also talking about the fact that U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen accepted $810,000 in bribes. I meant to say speaking fees. She collected $810,000 in speaking fees from Citadel. Now, under normal circumstances, I'd say that this is none of my business and wouldn't think twice about who's paying her or why. But these aren't just normal circumstances, and the fact that she refuses to recuse herself from overseeing matters related to Citadel and Ken Griffin, even though she agreed to do so in the ethics agreement she signed when she returned to the White House, makes me believe that something shady could potentially be going on here. So to put all this into context for you, it's imperative that you understand exactly who Janet Yellen is. But first, I'd like to point out that I find it extremely strange that as the current Treasury Secretary and former Federal Reserve Chair, Janet Yellen would accept $810,000 for speaking fees from Citadel, which just happens to be the same hedge fund that was heavily engaged in short-selling U.S. Treasuries. So, with that being said, both of Yellen's former positions, which would be Fed Chair and White House Policy Advisor, are the country's two highest-ranking economic policy positions, meaning she is arguably considered to be the most qualified person ever to take on her new role as Treasury Secretary. So keep that in mind real quick, and let's take a look at some other speaking fees that Miss Yellen has collected. As we can see here, we have JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, and even Deutsche Bank. Yellen has collected over $7 million in the last couple of years in speaking fees. But why does this matter? It matters because all of these banks are record holders when it comes to being fined, and fined for market manipulation and pretty much shady practices, just like, Citadel is. But maybe I'm just overreacting. I don't think that just because Janet Yellen accepted $810,000 from Ken Griffin, Citadel, that it's going to make a difference at all, or that she's going to play any favorites. And even if she would, it's not like Ken Griffin would allow her to do that because he's a man of honor. It's not like he's ever donated any money to anybody before or paid for any other speaking fees and then sent them personal emails with his problems and telling them to fix speed bumps that caused $10,000 of damage to his car or anything. That's never happened before. So yeah, let's not speculate. But anyhow, I've got a clip to play for you guys. I want you guys to watch all of it and then let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on it, because to me, it was an amazing find.
Can you honestly say that JP Morgan could be resolved in a rapid and orderly fashion as described in its plans with no threats to the economy and no need for a taxpayer bailout?
So the living will process, as I understand it, is something that's intended to be iterative in the sense that the firms submit plans and will receive feedback from the regulators on whether or not we think that the Fed and the FDIC regard these plans as sufficient to enable resolution under the bankruptcy code. We have given feedback on the first round of plans that were submitted, and are working actually to, at this point, to give feedback on the second round of plans. In fact, the firms have now submitted a third round of plans.
I'm sorry, Chairman, I'm just a little bit confused. JP Morgan submitted a round of plans in 2012, and my understanding is that neither the Fed nor the FDIC said that those plans were not credible. It then submitted plans in 2013, and neither the Fed nor the FDIC said they were not credible, and it has submitted plans in 2014. So I'm not quite sure on whether you're saying the plans are not credible and you're continuing to talk with them and asking them to change their plans. Is that the case?
Well, we're working to give these firms feedback on their second round of submissions. And I think what we need to do is to give them a roadmap for where we see obstacles to orderly resolution under the bankruptcy code, and to give them an opportunity to address those obstacles.
I appreciate that you're doing that, but the statute, it seems to me, is pretty clear here that it's mandatory that these plans be submitted each year, and that each year you determine whether or not the plans are credible. And I guess the question I'm asking is, have they ever gotten to a plan that you can say with a straight face is credible?
Well, I've understood this to be a process. These are extremely complex documents for these firms to produce. Our second round of submissions, we're looking at plans that run into tens of thousands of pages. And I think what was intended is that this determination you're talking about whether or not they're credible, question is, do they facilitate an orderly resolution? And I think we need to give these firms feedback.
So I'll stop there because we're running out of time. But I have to say, Chair Yellen, I think the language in the statute is pretty clear that you are required, the Fed is required to call it every year on whether these institutions have a credible plan. And I remind you, there are very effective tools that you have available to you that you can use if those plans are not credible, including forcing these financial institutions to simplify their structure or forcing them to liquidate some of their assets. In other words, bring FDIC, but also to bring some kind of confidence to the marketplace and to the American taxpayer that, in fact, there really is a plan for doing something if one of these banks starts to implode. You said that these plans run to the tens of thousands of pages. All I can say is that what's been released to the public is 35 pages long. That's about 1 page for every 100 subsidiaries that have to be dealt with. I think that the plans that have been released by these companies have not been something that the public can look at and say, yeah, I see that they've got a plan to get through this. So I hope you would urge greater transparency by these large financial institutions that are required to submit these plans. And I hope the Fed will be making a call on whether or not the Fed, under its statutory responsibility, sees these plans as credible for resolving these financial institutions if they hit financial trouble.
While I have you here, I wanted to quickly tell you about the brand new First Trade app, available for mobile or PC. The platform will give you access to powerful and easy to use tools and allows you to trade with less restrictions, zero commissions, zero fees, and you can use the first link in the description below to download a free stock today without having to deposit any money. This will greatly help out the channel and is always appreciated. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Congrats, ladies and gentlemen, you've made it to the end of the video. If you like what you watched, make sure you subscribe because I put out videos just like this one every single day. And please do me a favor and smash that like button if I helped you in any way, because it really goes a long way in helping the channel out and keeps me motivated to make videos every single day. Now, there's a lot of work involved, a lot of research, and a lot of time and effort into editing and putting these out daily for you guys. You can subscribe from your screen right now, or if you want to watch one of my other videos, I'm sure YouTube has some good content picked out for you on the left-hand side of your screen now. Thanks for sticking it out with me till the end, and I will see you guys in the next video.